Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Joining me now, Anna Heetman. She's a striking tenant and leader with the Independence Towers Tenant Union in Kansas City. They are part of an ongoing tenant strike, which my understanding is the largest in the history of Kansas City. Anna, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Okay, will you, let's just start with who's participating in the strike. My understanding is there are two separate tenant unions?
Correct. So first, the Independence Towers Tenant Union, which I am a part of, and then also the Quality Hill Towers Tenant Union, both started their rent strikes on October 1st.
And how many renters are we talking about?
So at Independence Towers, it is about 55% of the building, which I believe is around, like 35 to 40 tenants.
Okay.
At Quality Hill Towers, they don't have a majority of tenants striking, but it is enough to get their landlord Sentinel in the red. I believe they have around 50 to 60 leaders on strike right now.
What let's start with, I guess, the issue sets for both sort of, I guess, unions. What were they? What are they?
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, the buildings actually have a lot in common when it comes to the conditions. The conditions are absolutely horrid. I've lived at Independence Towers for over 5 years now. And I've experienced, a lot of water damage in my unit. There's been flooding that comes in, drywall crumbling on account of that, awful plumbing. I know at Quality Hill Towers, they also deal with water damage, mold, asbestos. There are pests at both properties, and management that is either just, not responding to or fulfilling work orders. And at Independence Towers, it's been, lack of security, just a lot of conditions issues, and also rents being raised on top of that year after year.
I think we have some pictures of the conditions in, and you tell us. I don't know if you can see these. We'll pop these up on the main screen. You can maybe walk us through, like, what are we looking at here? Matt will pop this up in a second. I mean, I can see the black mold on this. I don't know what you can explain what this apartment is. Can you see that picture?
Mm-hmm.
What is that we're looking at?
So this is actually the unit where a fire broke out. This was in mid-June. A fire was set in this unit on the second floor. And first of all, the fire alarms didn't go off. They didn't go off for the whole building. So there was one tenant who had to run up and down all 10 floors of this building, knocking on people's doors and letting them know there was a fire. It was terrifying. But this picture, I don't know exactly when it was taken, but this room sat filled with burnt debris for months. It wasn't until actually we started the rent strike that they actually had somebody come out to clear away.
Clean it up. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess it's not black mold, but it looks pretty bad. Let's. We can't quite click through these, so we're going to pop a couple up. Let's just put one or two more up. When you moved in, I mean, what was the condition of the place like 5 years ago? Has it gotten steadily worse?
Yeah, I would say it's gotten steadily worse. I think even 5 years ago, it was still not great. I mean, for me moving in, I didn't see a lot of these issues like on their face, like walking through the building or even, walking through my unit. The hole in my ceiling wasn't there when I moved in, but
Right.
As a lot of my neighbors also have said, it's like they do these temporary like Band-Aid fixes. So it looks okay, but living in these units, after some time, it's clear that, there hasn't been any like real fix to these issues.
Well, tell us about the ownership groups. Like, who are these people?
Sure. So at Independence Towers, the building was owned by Parker Webb from, I think it was around 2020 up until May of this year when the building went into receivership. And
Parker
so,
Webb is an individual or a company?
well, so Parker Webb is the CEO of FTW Investments, which is a property management company
Mm-hmm.
that has purchased struggling buildings in Kansas City over the years. And I don't think there's a single person I've spoken to who has a good thing to say about him or how he runs his properties.
So it went into receivership because he decided, like, I'm not going to afford to pay this, and I'm not going to pay a bunch of bills, and that's the way I walk away with a lot of cash.
So it was actually so basically this is something that happens through the court system. So Fannie Mae, who gave Parker Webb or gave FTW Investments this loan to purchase Independence Towers, a $5.5 million loan, they said, FTW, you have to make these certain repairs to the building, otherwise you're in breach of our loan agreement. And so they failed to make those repairs in the time given by Fannie Mae. So they brought that suit. And then, Parker Webb did voluntarily allow the building to go into receivership. Now, I think that's because our tenant union was in the press, days before the hearing in which the judge would have made this decision. And, we were going to go to the court and talk about our experiences, in the building that would have gone against some of what Parker Webb was saying at that time. In terms of how the building was, being maintained.
So essentially, he got scared off by the strike and by what was going to come out. And so, who owns the buildings now?
Right. So the court elected Tri-Guild Inc. to be the receiver of the property, and so Tri-Guild doesn't own the building, but they're basically sort of like a babysitter for the building until it can get sold to the next owner. And also, in the meantime, they're making some of these critical repairs.
So, how did you guys decide to strike? And then I want to hear what are the potential ways of solving this for you?
Yeah. So the decision to go on strike, it definitely wasn't a light decision, and it took, at Independence Towers and Quality Hill Towers, it's been a span of months, if not years, of organizing that's led to this moment. I know for myself, at Independence Towers, it really started back in March when we went without hot water for 2 weeks. And since that time, really, it's just been about me and my neighbors coming together and trying to get these entities, or the people in these entities, to have a conversation with us, to actually, come to the bargaining table and negotiate with us about what happens next. Because for so many of us, we've been in this cycle of bad property management companies or bad owners coming in, maybe thinking they can do something here, maybe not, but, within a short period of time, it gets flipped over, and then just nothing happens. So, we had spoken to Nancy Daniels, the vice president of Tri-Guild. We had a meeting with her. This was 3 days after the fire happened. And we were, at that time, we had not had AC all summer. And so we were trying to just say, you need to be communicating with the tenants. We can tell you what the problems are, and we can tell you, I stand in, the knowledge that we as the tenants have so much knowledge about the issues that are going on in our homes because we live with them every day.
Right.
And people like Nancy Daniels who, are off in a different state and not really seeing what's going on. We've done everything that we can to get the word out, to, let people know what's going on here, and to invite them to come to the table. And it's just not been happening. And so at a certain point we had to say, where is the most power that we hold as tenants? And that's in our rent, because that's really that's our side of the contract that we have with, our landlords. Our landlords are supposed to give us habitable conditions to live in at a minimum, and we're supposed to pay the rent. And so we're saying they breached their contract. They breached their side of the contract. We have done more than enough to try to remediate this and bring them to the table and have an actual negotiation. And so this rent strike is really our ultimate form of escalation here.
Do you, you guys are all withholding rent. Are you pursuing legal actions aside from that simultaneously, or is the idea, and then how do you what happens next?
Yeah, so there are a few legal actions flying around out there when it comes to FTW investments, I know, but nothing that we as the tenant union are directly bringing. However, we do have a motion to intervene that's been filed in the case between Fannie Mae and FTW investments. And that motion should be decided on by the end of this month. Basically, our idea with this motion to intervene was to have our tenant union become a party to that case, so that we have some say, in a legal way, we have that protected right as a party to have some say in what happens with the sale of the building.
What can people do outside of your two unions to help?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the first point to make is that this is so much larger than just our two unions, and so much bigger than just Kansas City. There are tenant unions across the country who are, on their way to getting ready to go on strike with us, and to force the question on the federal regulators, what are you doing? You're not regulating anything. One of our demands, across the board, with Independence Towers and Quality Hill Towers, is a 3% national rent cap on all loans originated from Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac.
So federally backed loans, one of the conditions for those loans would be to cap rental increases. Otherwise, go get your loans from somebody else. And without that federal government backing, these loans become a lot more difficult to procure.
Right. Yeah. And they become a lot less profitable for the people on Wall Street who are trading, on these loans too, which was something I knew nothing about really until I started organizing and learning more about the secondary mortgage market.
Right. I mean, these are all the securities that became a much bigger deal back in 2008, and they're not it's not quite the Wild West it was then. Are there any lawmakers who have expressed support for, if not a 3%, a 5%, or a 2%, or whatever? I mean, at least conceptually, the idea that why wouldn't we put strings on these loans?
Yeah, off the top of my head, there's nobody I can think of who I've heard, talk about rent caps in such a way to, be in support of them. I think a lot of people hear about the rent caps and they think, well, then how is anyone going to want to be a landlord or be doing this business and have it be profitable? It has to be profitable for them too, or whatever. But for me, I think, I don't know, there's a big issue when we're talking about the conditions in buildings with, that's backed by this public money. First of all, the conditions are so awful. And then if what happens next is what's supposed to happen next is that the building gets fixed up, right? And that takes money. I understand that. But I think that the thing that I keep thinking about is that's going to be the excuse to then jack up rents by a lot. And then the people who are living in these buildings that typically do have a lower rental rate than other, nearby areas, they get priced out, and it's effectively an eviction to have rents raised by that much.
Biden did offer a plan. I think that Harris also has accepted. It was 5% rent increase on units that our guests were getting specific federal tax breaks under these programs. So not quite as not using the Fannie and Freddie or the backing of these loans as a leverage point. But hopefully this is something that gets a little more attention. If people want to help now, like, is there a place they can send emails to, or, to add a certain amount of pressure?
Yeah, well, we don't currently have, someone who we're sending emails to, but that's something to keep an eye out on. The, KC Tenants socials will always have calls to action on there. But I think just like elevating the voices of, the strikers and just everything that's going on here, just to get it out there and have it be known that this is happening.
Well, we will put links to all of the KC Tenant strikers' social media accounts at majority.fm in the podcast and YouTube description. Anna Heetman, thank you so much for your time today. Good luck. Hopefully this, they'll sit down with you soon. But I guess maybe they need to feel a little more pain in their pocketbooks before that happens. But I really appreciate you telling us your story.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.